the Caterpillar tractors and cash flows you were working through. I think that's really important.
Yep.
It ties back to imagination a little bit. And what I'm curious about is this point in time, hundreds of thousands of people have read your book, learned your book, been to one of your seminars over the number of years, or they've been to a seminar from someone who is a practitioner that is now taking your message out into the world. And they're implementing this process into their lives. Over that time frame, I mean, there's a movement that's being created around this idea that's born out of your mind. You hear stories from clients and people that are doing this, and they tell you what they're doing that's different and how they're integrating into their lives. I'm curious, what surprises have come to you about some of the ideas? What are some of the things that surprise you that people say they're doing to implement this process that you wouldn't have even thought of yourself?
Well, the predominant thing is that they exposed to it and they suddenly think that they know all there is to know about it. Maybe went through an hour and a half introduction to the course. All of a sudden, they're an expert on it. And there's no way. Again, how do you explain infinite? There's so much out there that is just not saying it all. But that's just the frailty of human beings is what it amounts to more than anything else. That's why I have to go back to some basic like the grocery store. There's a lot of lip service out there of wanting to be in business. I want to have my own business. But the cold hard facts are most folks in business don't know how to run the business. Otherwise, they wouldn't behave the way they behave. It's just a simple item of there's two types of businesses out there that are notorious. The grocery business and the restaurant business. In the restaurant business, they say you got to watch two doors, front door and the back door. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
The back door will kill your business quicker than your front door will. Employees taking stuff out the back door and owners taking stuff out the back door. I remember one of my real estate partners back there years ago, and one of the developments that we had going on, he wanted to be the owner of a 7-Eleven there. Well, why? So I can get free groceries. That was his answer. So I can get free groceries. He didn't realize he was stealing.
No such thing as free.
No. But again, that's the mindset that has to be overcome out there because that's what people want to do. I've been a Christian since I was 9 years old. It's amazing how people look at the Bible. Man, there's 66 books there, and most of them in the Old Testament. The Old Testament's real thick. The New Testament's only yay thick. Why y'all want to study that Old Testament stuff? That's a long time ago. That's describing the problem of man in relation to his maker. Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. The Bible is the story of man's relationship to his maker. He's got a problem. Man does. He wants to be God. He created us for fellowship with him. Now, you can't have fellowship with a puppet. That's impossible because the puppet is you. So he had to give us free will. Well, that included the ability to reject him. So what is our normal tendency? Reject him. And that's what it's all about. The Old Testament covers 4,000 years. There's 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Nothing was written central message of the Bible during that time. There were other writings, of course. People love to write. Do you realize that the New Testament only covers about 75 years? That is all. Now, what happens when Jesus Christ appears on the scene? They knew there's a Messiah coming, but what they saw, he didn't meet their specifications. What's he teaching? Secession. There's no evidence that during that period of introspection of him out there in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights with Satan, maybe my best way to pull off this mission that I've got to change the hearts of men, I need to go get up with those Pharisees and get a PhD under Gamaliel like St. Paul did later on. There's no evidence at all. To the contrary, totally different. In this world, but not of this world. Just don't play their game.
Let's go to a shopping mall or some such place where there are lots of people to witness what I'm about to do to you.
Yeah.
At this point, I will pull out a gun and place it against your head and direct you to give me the contents of your wallet.
Yeah.
Or I will blow your brains out.
Right.
I can predict with certainty that those who saw this act will describe it as theft.
Yeah.
And they'll call for your punishment.
Yeah.
But if you will allow me to gather that same crowd for about an hour before you show up and let me talk to them about how we are going to divide the contents of your wallet.
Distribute among ourselves. That's democracy in action. Oh boy. Democracy is a crazy idea. It can't ever work. That always falls apart. But yet we worship that sort of thing.
What is the best way to solve the problem?
Contract freely with other people. That is it. The law of contracts prevails. When you destroy the law of contracts, you destroyed civilization.
And with life insurance companies having been around in the USA for more than 200 years,
Yes, it's older than our country.
and having been around longer than 170 years in Canada, the key here, I think, is that it's not a government-sponsored idea
No,
at all.
but yet people think, can't the government take this over? Well, again, if you get lots of people doing this, how they can put everybody in jail? It's impossible. That's why the idea that Carlos has come up with is so extremely important. We've got to get this done at the you and me level for a large number of people. And if we can achieve 10% of people understanding this, it becomes viral. History has proven that. But we got to get a critical mass. But it doesn't have to be everybody doing it, and then we get this done. No, it's done one by one. That's a discovery process by you, to me, those that are in your sphere of influence. And that will grow naturally. Once this is adequately explained, see, this is enlightenment. Jesus Christ said, I'm the light of the world. The light overcomes darkness, always. There are no exceptions. You kind of use your imagination, but that's the interest on the Bank of America card, that's interest on the boat payments, and one of the essentials of life and stuff like that.
Zero-turn tractors.
Yeah, stuff like that. Might even be country club membership, who knows, yeah. But financing is the way things go. See, Iacocca, you ever read his book? Yeah, he used to be at Ford, and he moved to Chrysler, and he says he would never have made that move had he known how bad off Chrysler was. Well, that's kind of interesting to learn that. And the only way he could see out of the mess that they were in was to get a government-backed guarantee for a loan, because they couldn't get it on their own. They had to have a government-backed guarantee. Well, how you get one of those? Well, you get your highest paid executives, your highest paid accountants, and your highest paid lawyers, and you go down to the inside the belt line at Washington, D.C. and camp out for a period of time while you courting lobbyists. And you have spent a ton of money trying to get Congress to appropriate this guarantee rather. All right, when they got the government-backed guarantee, finally, they wanted to have a party. We have succeeded. We're in. And Iacocca could tell them, guys, y'all don't understand something. Apparently, we don't have any money. All we got was a guarantee. We got to go to the banks now and get the money. And what the banks made them do made the other exercise pale in comparison. Now you add all that attendant cost I talk about, and it exceeded the value. It exceeded the cost of the interest by far over the period of the loan. Cost of acquisition of finance comes high, but that is not recognized out there in the marketplace.
Certainly not for people in their personal financial household.
Yeah, but it's probably just as bad in businesses, maybe even worse.
You use being an airplane driver, you use a lot of airplane analogies. Mm-hmm. You talk about an airplane not being able to fly through a vacuum. It has to go through an environment.
Yeah.
And then you draw a parallel towards how the average everyday American who doesn't have to be rich to get into the banking business is spending their money in all these different areas, and it's leaking out of their household. Doing seminars all over North America, Canada and the USA.
Yeah.
You've been in rooms in every major town and every small town all across 2 nations. When you go to do these events and these seminars over the years, you often see the same people are reattending. They're coming back to see you again, and they want to deepen their knowledge. They want to go deeper and understand more so they can be better in their own life.
Very, very rewarding. Just tickles me to death when I see that sort of thing. I was chasing a thought there a while ago about how people get astray so easily and get so involved in minutia. And when you get to be 87 years old, your perspective on things changes a good bit. You find out that your sense of values change. I reminded myself of this young fellow in the National Guard at summer camp. He took an automobile, a bus, a motorcycle, and an airplane. He was infected with what I call motion sickness. You get in conversation with this fellow, and all of his conversation was about going somewhere or coming back from somewhere. If you ask him what he did when he got there, he wouldn't know what to say. Totally influenced by motion. He had to be in motion somehow or another. That was life. There's a lot of excess baggage that you can accumulate out there in life you need to get rid of. Once you do get rid of all that sort of stuff, it's pleasant. You have time to do some things that are important and concentrate on some things that are important and learn from other people, reading and such, by golly. By the way, after Jason had sent me the list of things we wanted to address in this operation, I went to the reading list on our website and I discovered there's almost 150 books on history, where there's only 103 on economics. You can't study economics without studying history. That's all there is to it.
Can you share with us from your perspective what this concept of EVA amounts to?
It's September 1993. Our son was in Korea, South Korea, for 4 years, long in there. Mary and I went there for the month of September and spent that month. When we come back here, there's all that mail that came that month that we were gone. I'm ruffling through all that. Here's the second issue of Fortune magazine. I got to be one of the stupidest guys in this world. I took Fortune magazine for 35 years before I realized that I was wasting my time and money wading through 24 issues per year plus 2 bonus issues to find one decent article, because all the articles was about, look how good old Ken Lay is doing with Enron down in Houston. Look how good old Bernie Evans is doing with WorldCom in Mississippi. Look how good old Richard Scrushy is doing with Health South here in Birmingham, Alabama, which he spent prison time along with our ex-governor who's still in prison. Here's that second issue and the feature article cover story. EVA, Economic Value Added, concept put together by Stern Stewart Consulting Firm in New York. It's on our website. You can find it there. And I encourage everybody to memorize that thing. It's that important because Stern Stewart's making a ton of money teaching big businesses like Coca-Cola, CSX Railroad, Briggs & Stratton Engines, Quaker Oats et al. That, look, guys, y'all got money in capital, your stock. You got money borrowed from banks. You're paying them interest, but you aren't paying any interest to your own capital. Capital has a cost. Act like it. Observe that. Sean Tully, the guy who's writing this article, said that this is easily one of the most basic principles that ever came along, but it's been treated as if this is new and so forth. But no, it's been there day one. But somehow or another people have overlooked this big time. Well, this is a story of mankind that has always been there. There was overproduction of stuff, and these brilliant people in Washington, D.C. decided that the best thing to do would be to curtail production, so we'd pay you to not grow something. And so that was called a soil bank. Well, are you going to sue the federal government because they used the word bank? Our church had a food bank for people who needed charitable contributions of foodstuffs and so forth. We're going to sue them. My wife used to give blood regularly. Guess where she went? The blood bank. Are we going to sue them also? But the craziest things happen out there. But I've had all kind of feedback from home offices of life insurance companies because of the word bank. And they can't think that thing through at all. That really bothers me. But, you know, one of the things that stands out like a sore thumb, let's use a parallel, okay? Back when my children were young, I had a trust agreement, a trust with the First National Bank here in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. I am so glad I outlived that trust because a trust is no better than a trustee. What I've found is that the guy that's running the trust department of a bank that's a pass-through job. He might be there 4 or 5 years and that's it. Well, same sort of thing happens out there in corporations big time. How many years is somebody actually in office? They just kind of slough this sort of thing off. Oh, you can't use that word bank because that belongs to the bankers. And that's not so at all. That's life.
And using the term of a bank or banking is an action.
Yes.
And so when you talk about the function of banking and controlling it at the you and me level, you're really referencing being able to harness the transactional aspect of how we integrate money in our day-to-day life.
Part 1 of becoming your own banker. You mentioned in part 1 that banking is the most important business in the world and that without it, all business comes to a screeching halt. Can you expand on that?
Well, in this very room here a few years ago, we're filming, and the end product was Banking with Life, which we all know about. The third party, I believe, that is in the video is Dr. Paul Cleveland, Austrian economist at Birmingham Southern. And Paul says that money is not wealth. Wealth is goods and services. Money is the medium of exchange whereby we acquire real wealth, services, and goods. That medium of exchange there is universal in some form or another all over the world. That is critical that we understand it, but unfortunately, it's really not understood all that much.
Why would you say that is? Is it because of the mindset that predominates most of the world today?
True. It's a mindset problem more than anything else.
So Nelson, we know that everyone who utilizes money is familiar with the process of banking, but yet so few people control the function as it relates to their needs. How important is it for someone who's reading the book in part one to gain that initial understanding of the premise of why you wrote the book, Becoming Your Own Banker?
They've got to come face to face with the fact that their assumptions in all probability are wrong. It's almost as if people are sleepwalking, is what it amounts to, as far as getting into the real understanding of what's happening and who is who in the play. It's not there, and it's mostly because of erroneous assumptions. The last 4 years, we're trying to simplify life big time, and I'm trying to teach Mary how to be a widow and so forth. We were leasing cars since the time that Kim and Dave first married. We never owned a car, we leased. They bought us 3 different airplanes down through the years and so forth. This house, back in 1993, we sold this house to Dr. Barry Nash. He became a slumlord. I had a contract with him for that bottom floor, plus the parking area and so forth, and the garages. And one time he came down visiting and walked in the garage and he saw all those boxes of books stacked up and such. And he says, "Hey, Dad, what's all this?" "That's my inventory, son. Now, you know, I sell books." And, "Dad, that's not in the contract." He went up on the rent $200 a month. But he had a contract with his mother for these next 2 stories, and he was very generous to her for some reason or another, you know. So it's amazing what you can do if you think things through and use your imagination and whatnot.